Good morning, my gangland homies. This morning's or this afternoon or this evening's video is looking at implications for the economy. Um, Probably one of the hardest parts of research methods that the students don't get. It's actually my favorite part of research methods, to be fair. Um, it's ever since 2008, since the big financial crash, where people were losing jobs left, right, and center, and the economy was basically the earth was broken. The government have required students to have a bit of a better understanding about the economy and how the countries raise money. What does this have to do with psychology? You have to understand psychology's role in improving the economy. Not worse than in it, generally speaking, but you need to know the implications of certain theories and how they may improve or possibly worsen the economy. And what we mean by the economy is split into quite a lot, right? It's not just about making money. So, for example, you are expected to understand how psychological treatments such as drug therapies or CBT can help people return into work. And then you need to know the knock on effect of that. If people are in work because we're treating their depression, what's the consequence of that? Well, then they'll pay more tax. What's the consequence of that? Well, then more money will go towards the NHS. Well, what's the consequence of that? Well, you've then got less people going to the NHS because you're treating their depression and keeping them away from the NHS, but then you're also funneling more money towards it. You do have to have a basic understanding of things like the NHS, but not just that. Who pays tax, right? And how much? How many work days are lost due to things such as depression and anxiety? You can literally type that question into Google and it will tell you. And you need to know the NHS, who pays for it, and how expensive treatments are for the NHS to provide. So, what I'm going to go through today is not everything you need to know. Uh, the economy is constantly updating. So, right now, at the time of filming, the economy is an absolute free fall because the Conservative government have thought it's a brilliant idea to. Well, I'm not going to go into it, but this is actually also a good lesson to teach students subtly without them realizing about tax and how much they will pay. So at the moment, at the time of filming in 2022, this may be a couple of years old by the time you watch it, the tax band is 12,570, right? Meaning that basically, if you earn less than that, you pay no tax whatsoever, right? So in order to start paying tax, you have to earn £12,500. So the basic way to think about it is up till you earning 12 grand, 12 and a half grand, you pay no tax. But for every pound you earn over 12,570, for every pound you will pay 20p towards the NHS, the police, blah, blah, blah. Right? I think at the moment, if you go above 150 grand, for every penny you earn over 150 grand, you pay like 50p per pound. So the rich pay more tax, but then is that fair? Well, that is fair because they earn more money to burden that tax. So you can't. So yeah, I'm not going to go into it. But excuse me. The first 12 grand you keep all to yourself, and the rest will get taxed, and it goes towards the police, NHS. This guy, that's where my wages come from, basically, is your parents' tax. So thank them for me. So I've got an example here. Also, just to give you a bit of a clue about how much money you're going to take home and how much money to expect to take home. If you earn 37 grand, now this is actually a bad example. The average wage in the UK at the time of filming is 30 grand. The average is 30 grand. But let's say you're above average people. You're doing A levels, for example. You're at a strong college, probably going to go off to a good uni. So you'll probably earn an average of 37 grand. What does that mean? It means of that 37 grand, you're going to take home just under 29 grand. which means monthly after tax, you'll get £2,400 a month. Now, that may sound like a lot, but you may have mortgages to pay, you may have rent to pay, you may have phone bills, you may have insurance to pay, car insurance, for example, petrol, going shopping yourself. So it does go down pretty quickly. So basically, the average person, maybe slightly average, slightly over average, the average person pays £4,800 tax and £3,200 in national insurance. Now, I just want you to imagine if you're not working. If you're not working because you have depression, you're not paying that money. You're not paying that money. That's not going towards anything. In fact, you're not giving to society. In many ways, if you're not working, you are taking away from society. You're on benefits, for example. If disability benefits, for example, you can't work. You can't work at all. You're not physically able to work. So, and some people are not able to work. But if you have a curable mental illness and you're not at work, there is the argument there that we need to treat that, get you back to work so that you can pay money into the big national pot. You can pay money into this big national pot that we all live from instead of taking money away from it. It's specifically about curable mental illnesses. So, yes, anyway. As I said, you need to know the knock-on effects. So, why do we need to get people healthy? Why do we need to get people? What is psychology's role in getting people healthy? I'm just going to go on a limb here. I'm just going to go on a limb and I'm just going to say, how many days are lost due to depression? How many working days are lost per year? Here we go. COVID. No, I don't really care about COVID. How many working days? 9.1 days are lost to injury. 20 days are lost to ill health. 21 days. That's 3 weeks worth. On average, 3 weeks worth of work are lost per worker in the UK. That's way too much money to be lost. That's way too much productivity. That's costing the UK economy billions of pounds, and it's entirely treatable. Stress, depression, and anxiety. What happens if we were to treat these people so that we can reduce this 21.6 days? Great piece of advice, by the way. You definitely want to know that figure if it ever comes up in a question. And you want it as up to date as possible. So 21.6 may not be up to date in a couple of years. Hopefully we've got this number down. But I think you would argue there more days are lost due to stress, depression, and anxiety than physical ill health and injuries. So it's a major issue. So what's a consequence? What's a consequence of getting people back to work is that they can then contribute to the economy and vital services. This reduces reliance on the government paying out things like unemployment benefit, right? Because you get paid if you don't have a job, although you don't get paid that much. So this reduces the government paying that, right? CBT can completely cure depression, meaning that these NHS supplied drugs that they have to keep paying for, and we have to keep paying for, that's going to go down. It's going to allow the NHS to pour more resources into things that are currently incurable. Cancer is highly curable nowadays, but not entirely. There are some terminal cases still. And the other case here that you need to know is that you need to have a good understanding about productivity. Productivity is basically, and I know what you're thinking, I didn't take economics, so clearly I'm not interested. Unless maybe you do take economics. Productivity is basically a good way to think about it. How much does the average British worker produce, like work-wise, per hour compared to other countries? I got a nice little table here up to 2017. This line here is basically the British norm, right? Whether it goes up or down, they've just kept it the same. kept it the same. And then they've got other countries here, for example. Germany, which we all know is a highly productive country. Per hour, Germans, if we're looking at there compared to there, per hour, the average German worker produces 40% more work than the average British worker, right? It's pretty bad, right? It's pretty bad. In Britain, we are seen as the lazy ones of Europe. We're seen as just the lazy people of Europe. Basically, we don't do that much work. We take too many cigarette or vape breaks, for example. We call in sick too often, too easily. Our absenteeism is very high. Now we need psychology to be able to improve that. How can you improve people's work ethic? How can you improve people's absenteeism rate? So you kind of need to know how this is done. How you would phrase this is it depends on the question, doesn't it, really? So these are the questions that have come up before. Now, the thing you need to be wary of, I think you're actually unlikely going to get a implications for the economy role in the research methods section. It doesn't really come up that often. It usually comes up in the other sections: attachment, psychopathology, social influence, for example. There's schizophrenia, although it's not come up in that yet. So if you have a look at this first question just here, outline the economic implications of research into the role of the father. That's a tough question. Well, okay, off the top of my head, I'm just going to bullet point this because I would, if you're struggling on this, I would actually answer this question. Research often shows that fathers are just as capable as mothers in raising children. A consequence of this is that if we now know that fathers can raise mothers, and in a couple, the mother earns significantly more, when it comes to parental leave, that research is going to give the dad more right to stay at home, and then the mother, who earns more money and thus will pay more tax, can keep her high-flying job where she earns a lot more money, and therefore actually research into the role of the father is going to have positive implications for the economy. Because when there's cases where the mother earns more money, she's going to be able to keep her job that generates a lot of tax and therefore keeps the economy stimulated. The reverse of this, by the way, is that if we were to say to all mothers to stay at home, if we were to listen to Bowlby, for example, and say all mothers need to stay at home for the first 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of that child's life and not work, I'm not being funny, but the economy would break. If all of a sudden just under half the workforce left to go take care of their kids, this country would break. It would absolutely fall apart. We need men and women working with the amount that they are, keeping the economy going. If all of a sudden half the workforce would leave, the country would be in a much worse crisis than COVID, would be in a much worse crisis than all the Brexit issues we've had. The country would fall apart. So that is how you would answer that sort of question. Now, I do have some model answers here that I think are really, really quite useful to actually look at. I've got two just here. You may want to pause the screen if you want to look at it properly, but this one's a social influence one. That one's quite difficult, right? So social influence research helps us to understand how it is possible to change people's behavior. For example, understanding how to persuade people to eat more healthily. And the question is, with reference to this example of social change, explain how psychology might affect the economy. That's a toughie. You need to know about social exchange, but you also need to know about implications for the economy. And this question clearly came up in social influence, not research methods. So if we have a look, psychology could contribute to persuading people to get healthily, to eat more healthily through its knowledge of normative and informational social influence. Getting social media influencers to showcase healthy eating through their channels would persuade people to start eating healthy because they would want to fit in and gain approval from this behavior, which is NSI. And they may believe that this role model is more clued up on the knowledge of being healthy and may actually be correct, which is ISI. Right, so do you see you've linked the theory in here? Well, I have. In terms of persuading the population to be healthy, this would provide a positive knock-on effect of reducing strain on the NHS for avoidable surgeries, e.g., stomach stapling, and would allow vital resources to be diverted elsewhere in the NHS and other frontline services, and therefore psychology could have a profound effect on national health if it utilised the help of social media influencers. Now, the problem with this question is you can't revise it. You can't revise it. No chance. You have to be able to think on your feet for this question. So you can't be there like, oh God, I hope they ask about social influence and implications for the economy because then I can use social media influences. You can't do that, right? You've got to be able to think on your feet. This one here is a little bit easier. Briefly explain how the findings of research into treating depression, i.e. CBT, could have implications for the economy. You could do it CBT, you could do it using SSRIs, you could do it using any treatment basically. Research into treating depression can have far-reaching and positive consequences. If SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, can be further researched or made to be even more effective, they can be prescribed to keep people in work who would then pay more taxes and contribute to national finances instead of drawing them for things like unemployment benefits. Furthermore, if the side effects of SSRIs could be reduced through research, this could have an even greater impact on unemployment, reducing it down from its current rate of 3.7%, which was what the rate was in May 2022. This would also greatly improve productivity for those sufferers who can hold a job but have many absences throughout the year. So the increased output and productivity would also greatly benefit many industries such as food and construction, because more people are going to be working for longer. And we're not going to have to be waiting 4 years for them to redo the motorway, right? Finally, if SSRIs can be shown to be effective in the short term, this will allow more people to get to a level whereby they can attend counsel and look for permanent solutions instead of taking antidepressants for decades, which could actually be costly in the long term. So that's the sort of answer we are looking for when we talk about implications for the economy. That is everything I wanted to cover this morning. Very, very tough part of the spec. You do need to know the outside world a little bit. You do need to have a good understanding about unemployment rates, which you do need to revise before the exam, and you also need to know a lot about productivity and stuff like that. So I would, if I were you, have a look over these model answers. They're exactly what I would want you to be doing. Peace out.